That's it. That's it. That's it. I know you're thinking, what are you hiding? Isn't there more from which this 97% number came? No, there really is. It's true. Just because someone's a scientist doesn't mean they know any more about actual climate science than you or me.
I'm a botanist.
You wouldn't have your gastrointestinologist perform your brain surgery. Not even saying that most climate scientists, particularly those in a public dole, wouldn't say that climate change is an imminent threat and humans are the cause of it. My point is that just because someone says there is consensus, it doesn't absolve you or them of critical thinking. If you can't make the case as to why climate change is a catastrophic threat and man-made, you have no business citing some arbitrary number of which you don't even know the original source. That's it! That's it!
That's it!
No, that is far from about it. Andrig et al. In 2010 reported that out of a sample of 1,372 climate researchers, 97 to 98% of the most actively publishing in the field surveyed support the conclusion by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Stenhouse, Maybach, and Cobb 2014 found that among climate scientists and meteorologists, the climate science experts who publish mostly on climate change and climate scientists who publish mostly on other topics were the two groups most likely to be convinced that humans have contributed to global warming, with 93% of each group indicating their concurrence. The two groups least likely to be convinced of this were the non-publishing climate scientists and non-publishing meteorologists/atmospheric scientists, at 65% and 59% respectively. In the middle were the two groups of publishing meteorologists/atmospheric scientists at 79% and 78% respectively. It is no surprise that those with the least expertise in climate science were the least convinced, although still agreeing as a strong majority, and those with the largest amount of experience and expertise were the most convinced. This also highlights the misconception that climatology and meteorology are nearly identical sciences. They aren't. Verhegen et al. 2014 found that of scientists studying various aspects of climate change, 90% of respondents with more than 10 climate-related peer-reviewed publications, about half of all respondents, explicitly agreed with anthropogenic greenhouse gases being the dominant driver of recent global warming. This data was also published as part of a Netherlands Environmental Society Agency report. Carlton, Perry Hill, Huber, and Procopi determined that of biophysical scientists across disciplines at universities in the Big Ten Conference, 93.6% believe that mean temperatures have risen, and most, 91.9%, believe in an anthropogenic contribution to rising temperatures. Stephen J. Farnsworth and Robert Lichter found in 2011 that of 489 respondents from the American Meteorological Society and the American Geophysical Union, 97% accepted that global average temperatures have increased in the past 100 years. There is almost as great of a consensus on human-induced warming, with 84% agreeing and only 5% disagreeing that anthropogenic warming is now occurring. So yes, the consensus of experts in every study and every scenario is overwhelming. But let's go back to the Cook paper. Remember how I pointed out the bait and switch between scientific opinion and the scientific evidence itself that Crowder did? Cook was not the first to sift through papers to see their conclusions. In 2004, before that, Naomi Oreskes sifted through the abstracts of 928 scholarly peer-reviewed papers on climate change and found that of all the papers, 75% were either explicitly or implicitly accepting the consensus view, and 25% dealt with methods or paleoclimate taking no position on current anthropogenic climate change because they weren't even relevant to it. Almost the same results as Cook. Denialists adore throwing around the word debunk to the point that it means nothing. They said Cook had been debunked, and I debunked that debunking earlier in this video. Denialists don't care whether something has actually been debunked. They just latch onto any supposed debunking without critical thinking because it verifies their existing beliefs. They then tell those of us that accept scientific evidence that we aren't thinking critically. They will share a conservative blog post, citing another blog post, citing another blog post, citing a conservative news article, citing another conservative news article, which cites a scientific paper. Lo and behold, once I finally track down the original paper and read it, it says absolutely the opposite of what the long chain of ideologues said. So much for critical thinking. Crowder is acting as though there is a meaningful difference between an overwhelming consensus of 97% compared to a still overwhelming one of 91.9%. There is no difference. Either figure still equals a near unanimous agreement of the field of climate science. Both figures would equal an overwhelming consensus. So Crowder and the others are not debunking anything with their criticism of the number 97%. This discussion Crowder and other detractors are having about the figure 97% is completely and utterly a political maneuver. Crowder says, if you can't make the case that climate change is a catastrophic threat and man-made, you have no business citing some arbitrary number. He is half right. If you want to claim to be an authority on the topic, then yes, you have to be able to cite a lot more than just the 97% number. However, if like most people you have to work and put food on the table, the most rational possible thing you could do to come to a personal opinion with relatively high likelihood of being right and minimum time taken away from supporting your family is find out what most of the professionals in an area are saying, get their short and sweet explanation on why they say that, and in most cases, accept that the experts in the area are going to know more about the subject after 12 years of researching it than you do after a few hours of watching Fox News. After accepting that the scientists are probably right, you can thereby waive your right to decide whether the threat is catastrophic or not, because, like the original conclusion, the experts probably have a much better idea of whether it is catastrophic, not catastrophic, or somewhere in between than you do. They will also, in that case, probably have a better idea of how to address the problem. You can simply tell the truth if anyone asks you. Say, I don't know whether it is catastrophic or not, but I do know that the experts in the field probably know better than that pundit I saw on the news or that big mouth I saw on YouTube. None of this is to say that you shouldn't thoroughly research climate change and subject it to critical thinking if you have the time and resources. You should. That is what I did.